Discover this grandma's incredible journey, a touching tale of unexpected triumph over trauma. Ruth stood in the attic, sunlight filtering through the dusty window panes, a forgotten world waiting to be unraveled. The air was thick with memories, creaking floorboards echoing the unshakable weight of her past. She brushed aside cobwebs and unearthed a box brimming with her old sketches and paintings, an untouched testament to a talent long suppressed. Anxiety coiled in her stomach as the familiar doubts plagued her. Who am I to think I can still create? Who would care about a retired grandmother's art? As she dropped to her knees, the memories peeked out from the creases of her once vibrant canvases. They revealed a girl who found joy in colors and textures, a girl whose brilliance had been overshadowed by scars of childhood trauma. Ruth had spent decades perfecting the art of silence, crafting a warm facade for the world, for Claire, for her grandchildren, for Maplewood. But what lay behind that smile was a labyrinth of unresolved pain, dimming the vibrant colors of her creativity. Now Claire faced the impossible task of breathing life back into the town's struggling art studio, a venture inherited but burdened by debts, a mess her young mother felt forced to sell. Ruth watched the shadows of tension stretch across Claire's brow, felt her own heart tugged between loyalty to her daughter's wishes and a desperate urge to reclaim her lost purpose. It was an unbearable truth. Would Claire even want her assistance, the mother who had buried art beneath layers of hurt? "Mom, we can't keep it. Selling is the only option," Claire's weary voice echoed in Ruth's memory, a proclamation that sent ice through her veins. But sell it to whom? And for what? The studio that had been a staple of creativity in their tiny town was crumbling, a painful reminder of dreams abandoned. Would she let her daughter's artistic legacy wither away like wilted flowers? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can, leave a like. It really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That night, Ruth shifted restlessly in bed, the thrill of paint tubes calling to her. What if she dared to pick up a brush for the first time in years? What if her talents could save Claire's dream? But the memories of failure loomed like storm clouds, whispering of all the occasions she'd shied away from expressing herself, each regret tightening the grip around her heart. She could picture Claire's eyes, filled with disappointment, or worse, a blank gaze. Unease gnawed at her, unrelenting. Could she truly turn her past pain into something that mattered? Would that be enough to mend the growing rift between them? Ruth's hands trembled as she considered all the unfinished canvases in the attic, their colorful potential sealed away. As dawn broke, the wind rustled outside, a whisper of change. But even the day's promise felt tainted with a sense of impending loss. Ruth's mind raced. Could this renewed artistic spirit bloom against the backdrop of Claire's resistance? Her heart strained with the urgency to prove herself. Yet, beneath that determination, a flicker of fear lingered. Could the shadows of her past silence her for good? Time was running out. If she didn't create soon, the studio might vanish into obsolescence, taking her dreams with it. With an unsteady breath, Ruth decided it was time to confront not only the art abandoned within her, but also the daughter she desperately wanted to connect with. Would this be the moment that rekindled hope for both of their futures? Or would it simply unravel everything she held dear? The weight of her choices pressed down, and with each heartbeat, she stood on the brink of an uncertain future, where her voice finally mattered, or where silence would reclaim her once more. Ruth woke with the sun streaming through her window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The warmth was reassuring, but within her, a storm brewed. Thoughts whirled around her mind like colors on a palette, each one vying for attention, yet none seemed to coalesce into clarity. The urgent call to create pulled at her, relentless and unyielding. She glanced once more at the box of sketches beneath the attic window. Unfinished pieces sat like abandoned children waiting for their mothers to return. Clenching her jaw, she swung her legs over the side of the bed, determination slowly anchoring itself in her heart. Today, she thought, I will paint. I will show Claire. With each step toward the attic, the air thickened and her breathing quickened. What if she exposed her true self to her daughter, only for Claire to recoil in disappointment? Over the years, Ruth had learned to tread carefully to avoid the jagged edges of her past. But blocking Claire from knowing her fully felt like a greater betrayal. Reaching the attic, she set her sights on one particular canvas resting against the wall. It was a bright sunset she had started years ago, but had ultimately abandoned. The memory of her emotions during that moment enveloped her, the sense of freedom, the joy of creating something beautiful. Ruth knelt and began unpacking the materials, brushing off the cobwebs of abandonment. The colors invited her like old friends. The first stroke of the brush sent a shiver down her spine. It was electric, both terrifying and exhilarating. As the paint mingled, the canvas came alive under her hands. Memories and emotions bled into the vibrant colors, an expression not only of aesthetic beauty, but of the deep, tumultuous journey she had endured. Yet, as she painted, her mind wandered back to Claire. How would she react? Would there be scorn or understanding? The thought of her daughter's reaction acted like a double-edged sword, slicing through her newly found courage. Ruth needed that approval, but more than that, she needed to express herself, to break the cycle of silence that had shackled her for so long. Hours passed, lost in the rhythm of brush and canvas. Each stroke connected her more closely to her essence, illuminating the dark recesses that had held her captive for decades. There was something cathartic in creating, a release that transmuted the pain of the past into a vibrant testament of resilience. But doubt also crashed in, reminding her that the world outside had little patience for a grandmother's late-found passions. What value would her art hold beyond the sanctuary of her attic? With the sun dipping low, Ruth stopped and stepped back, gazing at what had emerged, a landscape rich in both color and emotion. For the first time in years, her heart felt lighter, and the burdens of unspoken truths began to unravel. Yet shadows lingered in the corners of her mind. Would this be enough for her? Would Claire see her as more than just a mother burdened by life's disappointments? As night fell, Ruth gathered the courage to bring her creation downstairs, intent on sharing it with her daughter. The potential for vulnerability filled her with both hope and trepidation. This was the moment she had longed for, a bridge over the gulf of misunderstanding and silence she had built between them. But what if Claire dismissed it? What if her daughter failed to understand the importance of this journey? The introspective whispers rebounded in her mind as she descended the stairs. With each step, the weight of her decision magnified, and she felt the sheer fragility of hope that both desired and feared connection. Moments stretched, her heart pounding like drums in the quiet darkness of the house. This was her crucible, the moment where choices converged. Would this finally be the transformation they both needed, or just another fracture in the delicate fabric of their relationship? As whispers of determination gripped her, Ruth reached the bottom stair, the polished wood gleaming under the soft overhead light. Claire was in the living room, her head buried in paperwork, exhaustion written across her features. Would this revelation breathe new life into Claire, or send her further away? Ruth inhaled deeply, as her next step could alter the course of their lives forever. Ruth paused, her heart racing, as she grasped the painted canvas tightly, the weight of it grounding her in that moment. She took a step into the living room, the fragile threads of hope and fear weaving through her chest like a tightly held secret. It was breathtaking, the vulnerability she felt, the urge to unshake the years of silence that had dictated her relationship with Claire. "Is that you?" Claire glanced up, weariness washing over her features, chased away only by the flickering hint of curiosity. Ruth hesitated, looking into her daughter's eyes, desperately searching for the familiar spark of love that had dulled over the years. I wanted to show you something." Her voice trembled slightly, echoing the uncertainty swirling within her. Claire set her paperwork aside, her eyebrows knitting together as she leaned forward. "What is it?" As Ruth unfolded the canvas, she held her breath. Slowly, the sunset she had revived came into view, the swirling reds and oranges blossoming like embers against the twilight. "Wow," Claire breathed, her eyes widening. "You painted this?" "Yes," Ruth replied, the vulnerability cascading over her like waves. "I started it a long time ago. Today I just felt compelled." A silence stretched between them, layered with unspoken words and buried emotions. Ruth's heart sank slightly. Had she made a mistake in revealing this precious part of herself? Claire's reaction felt pivotal, yet the shadow of doubt loomed. "I never knew you could paint like this," Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ruth's pulse quickened with an unexpected rush of elation. "I used to do it all the time, before life became too overwhelming." The admission came tumbling out before she could catch it. "I thought, maybe if I could show you, just this once, it would help you understand me better." "Understand you better?" Claire repeated, intrigue flickering across her tired face. "What do you mean?" Ruth caught herself, a wave of introspection crashing over her. How much had she held back from Claire? Years of creative fire extinguished under the weight of discontentment, her identity reduced to merely mom. This revelation was less about the painting and more about her ongoing struggle to reclaim who she was beyond motherhood. "I spent so many years hiding away my passions, thinking it would shield you from my failures. But in doing that, I buried myself. No wonder we drifted apart," she confessed, finally setting the canvas down on the table. Feeling exposed, her words tumbled forth. "I want you to see the woman behind the mother. I want to show you who I am, who I used to be." A quick flicker of emotion darted across Claire's face. Was it surprise? Anger? She seemed lost in thought, leaving Ruth grappling with the uncertain repercussions of her admissions. "Mom, Claire hesitated, her gaze flicking back to the painting, her fingers brushing against the canvas's edge. "I didn't realize. I thought you gave up on your art after your father," Ruth finished softly, a flood of memory stealing her breath. "After your father left, I thought art wasn't worth pursuing any longer. I thought keeping my burdens to myself would make my love for you clearer, more unencumbered." Claire exhaled deeply. Her defenses appeared to soften. "Mom, I didn't realize being creative meant so much to you. But what about now?" "What will you do with this?" The question loomed large, heavier than the canvas itself. Would Ruth allow herself to dream again, to launch into the unknown possibilities rather than retreat into old fears? Honestly, I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. The vulnerability mingled with an emerging determination, but I want to try. In that shared moment, a thin layer of understanding began to weave between them, fragile yet profound. As they stood on the threshold of something new, a sense of urgency enveloped Ruth. This was not just a sharing of art, it was an invitation to break free from the ghosts of their past. But the question gnawed at her. Was sharing this painting enough to bridge the emotional chasm they both had built? The clock ticked softly in the background, time creeping forward. Ruth braced herself for whatever might come next, yet uncertainty lingered, a reminder that unveiling her heart might unearth even deeper conflicts. What lay ahead, both in her relationship with Claire and within herself, held the potential to either heal or fracture them further. Ruth inhaled, preparing herself for Claire's next words. Whatever they might be would determine the course of the evening and perhaps the future. Ruth tightened her grip on the table as Claire's eyes shifted from the painting to her mother, reflecting a maelstrom of emotions. There was something almost electric in the air, a potential for change that both excited and terrified Ruth. The pendulum of their relationship had begun to swing, and now they stood at a precipice, on the verge of something unknown. "Mom, it's beautiful," Claire finally said, her voice laced with a newfound resolve. "But you've got to find a way to continue. This can't just be a moment." The challenge in Claire's words struck Ruth with unexpected force. Was it truly possible that one painting could serve as a catalyst for broader change? The thought made Ruth dizzy. She refocused on the canvas in front of her, the vibrant hues pulsating with life, demanding acknowledgement and action. "I assume you want me to paint more?" Ruth asked, her tone skeptical yet hopeful, scanning Claire's expression for encouragement. "Of course, and think about it as a way to heal, for both of us." Claire's sincerity broke through Ruth's lingering doubts. "Art can be a bridge, don't you see? It may not solve everything right away, but it's a start. It's hope." Hope. The word hung in the air, heavy with possibilities. Ruth pinched her eyes shut, shaking off the years of doubt that had cloaked her aspirations in shadows. Could she face the blank canvases of her life, each one filled with unfulfilled potential, and dare to dip the brush back into the colors of joy and creativity? The thought ignited a fire deep within her, and embers flickering back to life. "I could start taking classes, or even join a local art group," she murmured, her voice thick with contemplation. "That's exactly what I was thinking." Claire leaned in closer, excitement lighting her features. "You used to be so vibrant, Mom. Remember how you talked about applying to art school? Maybe that's what you should revisit." The mention of art school brought a bittersweet ache to Ruth's heart, memories cascading like waves crashing at the shore. Years of ambition cheapened by personal failures and fears. "I'm not the same person I once was," she confessed, the walls of her self-doubt beginning to crack. "Maybe you're not," Claire replied gently, "but that doesn't mean you can't become even more than you were." Ruth allowed herself a moment to absorb Claire's words. Could she reclaim the pieces of herself that she had long buried beneath sacrifices and regrets? She pictured herself standing in a sunlit classroom, surrounded by lively discussions and shared inspirations. A flicker of excitement bubbled to the surface. "I'll try," she declared, clarity slicing through her uncertainty. "Even if it scares me, I want to paint again. I want to explore." Claire smiled, a genuine warmth radiating toward Ruth. "That's the spirit. Remember, you don't have to do it all at once. It's about progress." Then, as if struck by an epiphany, Claire's expression changed. "What if I joined you? I've always loved art, but never pursued it. Maybe we can explore together. We can create our experiences while we heal." The suggestion pierced through Ruth's self-imposed isolation like sunlight through clouds. This was more than a mother-daughter reconciliation. It was an opportunity to reforge their connection through shared experiences. But doubt surged within her, creeping back despite her newfound resolve. Would they be able to navigate this uncharted territory? Would trying to rekindle their relationship through art pull them closer or tear them apart even further? "I don't know. What if it doesn't go well?" Ruth's hesitance surfaced, bringing the weight of years of vulnerability back to bear. "That's the beauty of it," Claire reasoned. "If it doesn't work out, at least we tried. We both have so much to gain by opening up." The clock ticked steadily in the background, a metronome marking the time they had lost. Ruth could feel the threads of her past tugging at her, but she also sensed the burgeoning possibility of a brighter future. Could she embrace this journey, not only as an artist, but as a mother reconnecting with her daughter? Ruth's heart raced in the silence that followed as she contemplated the path forward, one that could forever change the dynamics of her relationship with Claire. And then, just as certainty began to bloom inside her, the sudden sound of a text notification from Claire's phone shattered the moment. They both glanced at the screen as Claire's expression shifted again, the excitement replaced by a flicker of concern. "Mom, wait, what if she's moving back?" Claire's voice trembled as she read the message. The future felt once again uncertain, teetering on the edge of revelation and turmoil. As Ruth met Claire's anxious gaze, she realized they were poised on the brink of a much larger conflict than either had anticipated. Ruth exhaled sharply, the impending shift in their already fragile dynamic closing in around her. Claire's anxiety radiated through the air, echoing Ruth's own insecurities. The phone's beep, a seemingly innocuous sound, had morphed into an alarming harbinger of change. She cast a quick glance at Claire, noting the shadows of trepidation that danced across her daughter's face. "What does it say?" Ruth asked, though the question felt weighty. She feared the answer could lead to more complicated emotions than their reconciliation had already brought. Claire hesitated, her gaze fixed on the screen. "It's from Leah," she said, her tone trembling. "She's considering moving back for good." The words hung in the air like the fading light before dusk. Ruth felt the weight of memories bearing down on her, memories she wrestled with every day. The chaos of raising Claire amid her own unresolved issues nearly overwhelming her now. Leah's sudden potential return threatened to destabilize their fragile plans for healing. Ruth's heart raced. She wasn't ready to face Leah again, especially not when she was attempting to reclaim her identity through art. And now Claire wanted to include her in that too. "What do you think?" Ruth managed to ask, her voice sounding more distant than she intended. "I don't know, Mom," Claire said, swallowing hard. "Part of me thinks it could be good, that maybe we all need to work through some things together. But the other part of me," she shook her head, frustration flickering in her eyes. "What if it just complicates everything?" Ruth's mind raced. Claire's uncertainty mirrored her own. Could they truly start healing their relationship, or would Leah's presence catapult them back into a tidal wave of unresolved conflicts, casting shadows over their opportunities for artistic growth? The idea of sharing both a creative journey and emotional vulnerabilities with Claire while navigating Leah's return ignited a tempest of fear within her. "Maybe we should talk to her," Claire suggested, tentative yet brave. "Put our cards on the table as a family?" The thought sent shivers coursing down Ruth's spine. Could she handle the prospect of putting her heart on the line, revealing her fears and failures to Leah? A part of her wanted to shield Claire from that potential hurt, wanted to keep the delicate tapestry of their newfound relationship intact. Yet another part, the embers of her artistic spirit once again aflame, urged her toward vulnerability and honesty. "What if we set boundaries?" Ruth proposed, her mind beginning to map out strategies for managing this emotional landscape. "Maybe we can say that we'll see how it goes with art first." Claire nodded slowly, her brows furrowed in thought. "That could work. If we keep our focus on healing, my painting and your returns to art, that could be our anchor." Ruth took a deep breath, the prospect of openness both terrifying and exhilarating. If she could firmly ground herself in her honest experience, artistic growth, could she also become a better foundation for Claire? Envisioning herself sketching among other artists, surrounded by encouragement and vibrant colors, she felt the first sparks of confidence. "I think it's worth a shot," Ruth said, her voice steadier now. "But we have to promise each other not to let Leah's presence overshadow what we're trying to create together." As Claire offered a tentative smile, Ruth couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping onto stormy waters, both buoyed by hope and laden with uncertainty. "The real question is," Claire said, a hint of rebellion in her tone, "are we going to tell Leah we're painting together, or keep that as our little secret for now?" Ruth chuckled softly, despite the tumult within. "Maybe we can make it a surprise, an unexpected reveal." As they settled into a tentative camaraderie about their plans, Ruth felt the sting of fear fade slightly, replaced by a cautious excitement. Yet an unsettling reminder loomed over her, the knowledge that their artistic journey might soon be intertwined with Leah's own decisions. "Just promise me," Ruth murmured, an undercurrent of resolve circling through her words. "If things start to spiral, we address it immediately. No more running away." "Deal." Claire's voice was strong, a tether anchoring them in that uncertain moment. And just like that, amid swirling doubts and the sharp edges of change, Ruth realized there was only one way forward. But who was Leah truly? Would her presence ignite paths of creativity or drown them beneath old vulnerabilities? As Ruth set her sights on the journey ahead, a single question hung in the air, echoing through her thoughts like a whisper of fate. What if falling into the tumultuous depths of family conflict was the very thing that would lead her to the surface of her truest self? Ruth's mind swirled with the implications of Leah's possible return, but it was the thought of her own art that suddenly became a sharp focus. Every brushstroke had the potential to channel her fears, her uncertainties about Leah, and her anxiety about Claire's future. The upcoming art classes had already sparked a flicker of creativity within her. Now it took on a renewed urgency. As she leaned back in her chair, Ruth considered the first lesson in this new journey toward artistic expression, a lesson rooted in vulnerability. It hit her. Creating art was not merely about the end product, but the process, the way it allows one to unpack emotions and confront fears. Could this be the foundation she needed for the more significant confrontations that loomed ahead? The next morning, Ruth located her old sketchbook, dusty and dim, a relic from a past she thought was lost. Opening it, she felt an electric pulse of nostalgia, each page a window into her earlier self, teeming with aspirations and frustrations. Scribbled notes beside half-finished sketches revealed in her all-too-real struggles, the same anxieties that quietly but relentlessly taunted her daily. "I need to embrace this again," she whispered to herself, almost as a promise. Engaging with the sketchbook, she felt her confidence swell. Every line she drew echoed her thoughts, realizations about her relationship with Leah, the complexities of motherhood, her own artistic identity. Fueled on determination, she decided to sign up for a local art workshop that promised a chance to collaborate with other artists. The prospect of working alongside others, sharing techniques, and navigating critiques filled her with an invigorating energy. Ruth envisioned herself painting alongside those students, a community she could foster, if only for just a few hours a week. It would be a space to both create and heal. Yet, as the workshop loomed closer, doubt crept in. What if she failed? The very idea of confronting her own inadequacies in front of strangers was paralyzing. What if Claire was right and Leah's presence became a suffocating weight? Fear began whispering troubling notions that opening herself to vulnerability could lead to heartache instead of growth. But amid the echoes of her insecurities, Ruth felt an unfamiliar resolve. She could no longer afford to stay stagnant, avoiding the discomfort of potential conflict and emotional upheaval. Her art could be an anchor, a stabilizing force as she navigated these turbulent waters with Claire and Leah. On the day of the workshop, nerves fluttered in her stomach as she pushed open the door to the art studio. Posters of various styles adorned the walls, a collection of optimism and individuality. It was an explosion of colors that made her heart race. She was somewhere new, poised for rebirth. Finding a spot near the window, Ruth took a deep breath, letting the bright light wash over her face, illuminating the path ahead. The instructor, a warm, encouraging woman in her 40s, welcomed the group and invited everyone to introduce themselves. As each person shared their artistic background, Ruth listened intently. She heard passion, ambition, and a shared understanding of vulnerability. This was cathartic. Each story normalized the cracks, the hesitations that life etched into everyone's journey. Ruth found her voice. When it was her turn, she confidently introduced herself, revealing her renewed commitment to art after so many years. She felt the collective energy shift, warmth enveloping her like a hug, as her words resonated with others sharing similar journeys. The exercises began, and Ruth discovered herself lost in strokes and colors, allowing creativity to guide her and silence the self-doubt. For the first time in a long time, she felt the weight of her burdens lessen, the freedom to explore her thoughts flowing onto the canvas. Each brushstroke invigorated her, crafting not just art, but a deeper understanding of her emotions. Yet, as she engaged fully with the art, the specter of Leah loomed larger. Would this newfound confidence solidify her stance against whatever confrontation awaited her family? Would her renewed commitment to art serve as a protective barrier or a bridge to confront unresolved issues? As the workshop came to a close, a sense of clarity emerged. Ruth realized that the conflict within her, between the excitement of creative expression and the anxiety of familial entanglements, would serve as the catalyst for her transformation. But could she sustain this equilibrium when faced with Leah's return and the potential unraveling of her hard-won progress? She left the studio, canvas clutched tight, feeling both hope and trepidation surge through her. Each step forward held the promise of her personal renaissance, even as she braced for the impending emotional waves Leah's presence threatened to unleash. The next chapter of her journey, both in art and family, threatened to test her limits in ways she was unprepared for. But perhaps this was the moment she was building toward, the intersection of confrontation and creativity where true growth resides. However, as she reached the car, that nagging question echoed back to her. Could she truly transform her fears into a source of strength, or would she drown beneath the weight of past wounds? Ruth sat in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel as if it were a lifeline. The colors of her artwork danced in her mind, bold, vibrant, yet tinged with a shadow of doubt. The familiarity of the sketchbook in her bag felt like a comforting weight, a reminder of her renewed path. But doubt lingered, uninvited. How well would she wield this newfound confidence when Leah's presence entered her life again? She reopened the workshop's creaky wooden door the following week, breathing deeply, drawing energy from the vivid environment. The group had already developed a rhythm, sharing laughter and critiques as the aroma of paint filled the air. Yet she hesitated outside the threshold, considering whether to fold back into the shadows of her insecurities. "Hey, Ruth, you coming?" A friendly voice cut through her reverie. It was Mia, a fellow participant whose art had imprinted on Ruth's mind, a tangle of emotions layered on canvas. The invitation felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. Ruth forced a smile and entered the room, joining the circle as they began their next project. The instructor explained the theme, transformation through vulnerability. As they picked colors and discussed inspirations, Ruth felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crack, allowing glimpses of vulnerability. Each artist began to reveal not just their techniques, but their fears. A kind of honesty emerged, laying bare the threads of their stories. Each stroke of the brush on her canvas reflected her journey thus far. She found herself revisiting images of Leah, not in anger, but with an unsettling quietude. What had once been anxiety now shifted to a soft curiosity. Who was Leah to her now, especially in light of this awakening? What would it mean to truly confront her? The exercise forced Ruth to grapple with the act of letting go. She filled her canvas with chaotic spirals, representing her tumultuous thoughts about Leah. Her hand moved almost of its own accord. She painted through tears, each layer of color signifying unspoken fears and buried dreams. This act of creation transformed her frustrations into catharsis. It was an unmasking, not just of the canvas, but of her own spirit. Yet, during lunch, the conversation turned contemplative. The topic shifted to family and relationships, each shared story peeling back layers of hidden hurt. Ruth listened as others recounted struggles with rejection, foregone dreams, and the haunting specter of past choices. It was during those conversations that Ruth's heart began to race. She had shielded herself from the reality of confronting her past. Art can be a way to confront pain, Mia observed thoughtfully, eyes reflecting empathy. It's how we translate those deeper wounds into something that breathes. The weight of those words sank deeply within Ruth. Here she was, grappling with buried emotions, uncertain if she could fully embrace the fullness of expression that art and vulnerability demanded. As the workshop progressed each week, the radiant colors she layered began to mirror her own internal changes. Each brushstroke was a new commitment, an allegiance to facing her fears rather than escaping them. Chloe's art encouraged her. If they could confront their demons together, perhaps she could too. The anticipation of Leah's return loomed heavily as the weeks wore on. Their inevitable reunion clashed with the newfound clarity she was cultivating. Was she truly ready to confront the pain of their past? Or even worse, the possibility of reconciliation? One Saturday morning, while preparing for the workshop, Ruth received a text. Leah wanted to meet. One simple sentence ignited an onslaught of emotions, hope, dread, and a burgeoning sense of possibility. Ruth felt the sharp sting of panic mixed with exhilaration. There it was, the moment approaching her like the canvas that awaited her next brushstroke. Steeling herself, she entered her workshop that afternoon with more than just her art supplies. She carried a weighty anticipation, a crossroads of her journey. Would the confrontation bring her liberation, or would it shatter the delicate progress she had fought so hard to achieve? It was a question entwined with anxiety and courage, pushing her toward an inevitable revelation. The canvas before her awaited Leah, but so did Leah, and in that intricate balance hung a moment that could redefine everything. Her hand trembled as she approached the easel. The next step would be monumental, and she felt the tide shift beneath her as personal transformation and impending confrontation collided head-on. Ruth stood at the easel, heart racing, grappling with the whirlwind of emotions that surged through her. The canvas before her, a reflection of her internal chaos, awaited her next move. With trembling fingers, she dipped her brush into the vibrant paint, unsure of how to express the swirling thoughts in her mind, the anticipation of her encounter with Leah, and the fears it induced. As she stood there, the colors became a vivid manifestation of her conflicting feelings. The bright hues of red and orange clashed with depths of dark blue and green, much like her emotions, hope, battling resentment, love colliding with hurt. This painting wasn't just an artwork, it was a therapy session on a canvas, a battleground where her past met her present. Each stroke birthed a new layer of understanding within her, a revelation of hidden talents. Perhaps she hadn't just been an artist incapable of portraying her feelings, but rather someone capable of uncovering the truth beneath the surface. The realization hit her. It wasn't just about creating art, but about using it as a conduit to confront her pain and seek healing. "Let go of fear," she whispered to herself, repeating it like a mantra. The words echoed the core of the workshop's theme, urging her to embrace vulnerability, not only with her brush, but within her heart as well. Today was the day she would not merely cover her scars with paint, but instead reveal them and give them form. With determination ignited, Ruth let the brush fly across the canvas, tears streaming down her cheeks. Every layer of paint became a release, a badge of her struggles, and the strength she was slowly uncovering. She was no longer merely painting about Leah. She was transforming her anguish into something beautiful, a testament to her evolution. By the end of the workshop, Ruth stepped back from her creation, breathless. The canvas glowed with energy and emotion, each color telling not just her story, but the story of survival. The swirling chaos within had found a delicate truce. This was the moment of truth she had been waiting for, a turning point where she recognized that confronting her past did not mean reliving it, but rather altering her narrative. As she packed her supplies, Ruth couldn't help but reflect on Mia's insightful words about art and pain. In learning to confront her own wounds, she began to see Leah not as an enemy, but as a piece of her story, a puzzle she needed to confront. Perhaps the meeting wouldn't just be a confrontation. It could pave a way forward, a bridge crossing from hurt to healing. Later that evening, Ruth prepared for their meeting, her heart a chaotic symphony of trepidation and hope. She caught her reflection in the mirror and, for the first time in a long while, saw someone who was ready to face her past rather than flee from it. The light in her eyes flickered with resolve. But as she left her apartment, a nagging sense of doubt crashed back in. Could she truly engage with Leah without the past overwhelming her again? Would the layers of progress she'd painted into her life be enough to protect her? As she headed toward the cafe where they agreed to meet, thoughts raced through her mind. The moment had come. The stakes felt higher than ever. Ruth felt like a warrior embarking on a quest, armed with the knowledge of both her vulnerability and her power. She turned the corner, drawing in a deep breath, ready to embrace whatever awaited her. And just as she spotted Leah entering the cafe, a chilling thought struck her. What if healing turned out to be more complex than she ever imagined? Would the pain resurface, more potent than before? This thought left a lingering question, an uncertainty that pressed into Ruth's chest. The confrontation was imminent, and she knew it would redefine everything she had begun to understand about herself. How would this meeting reshape her story, and what new revelations awaited her on the other side of this encounter? As Ruth stepped into the warm glow of the cafe, a cacophony of voices buzzed around her, but her focus fixed solely upon Leah across the room. The sight of her sent a fresh wave of uncertainty rippling through Ruth's core. Leah appeared calm, perhaps even relieved, a stark contrast to the storm within Ruth's heart. This was not just a meeting, it felt like a reckoning, an attempt to stitch together torn pieces of both their lives. Ruth approached, her pulse quickening. Leah looked up, and their eyes met. For a moment, time suspended, allowing the weight of shared history to linger unspoken between them. Ruth registered Leah's hesitance, the tiny flicker of fear that mirrored her own. Would either of them take the first step toward healing, or would they tread the same old ground of their past grievances? "Hey," Leah greeted, with a tone drenched in tentative warmth. "Thanks for coming." "Yeah, of course," Ruth replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. She felt raw, exposed, as if they were two performers on a stage, each hoping the other would remember their lines. "I thought it was important." As they settled into a small, intimate corner table, Ruth couldn't shake off the sensation that every word spoken would carve a new path in their stories. She was determined to engage unlike before. Somehow, she had to summon the courage cultivated through her painting. Art had taught her that vulnerability wasn't a weakness, it was a strength waiting to be harnessed. "About the last time we spoke," Leah began, her voice stuttering under the tension. Ruth sensed the weight of old wounds threatening to erupt, and instinctively her mind pivoted. "Let's not dwell on the past," Ruth interjected softly, surprising herself with her assertiveness. "Instead, let's talk about us." The shift in dialogue crystallized something within Ruth. It was a deliberate choice to confront their shared narrative, not as antagonists, but as two women trying to redefine their connection. The decision snapped into place like a puzzle piece. As Leah nodded, her tension visibly lessened. Ruth recognized this crucial moment. They were both ready to face their intertwined journey. "Okay," Leah said, gazing down at her coffee. "I can do that." Ruth's pulse quickened again, filling the silence as anxiety buzzed around them. "I think we both needed time to understand ourselves before we could understand each other. I've been working on my painting, and it's really been therapeutic." The truth felt liberating to express. Her art had been a catalyst for healing that she hadn't fully acknowledged until now. Leah looked up, surprised but intrigued. "I always knew you had a talent for it, Ruth. I was just consumed by my own struggles." Feeling empowered by the flow of their conversation, Ruth leaned in. "Maybe we should celebrate our journeys, like the pieces of art we're creating. We are more than our shared trauma. We have potential." That thought echoed within her, a newfound tenet of their shared growth. But as Leah's expression shifted from surprise to contemplation, a new fear crept into Ruth's mind. What if Leah wasn't ready to acknowledge that potential? What if the past still held them captive, lingering like shadows lurking beneath their words? The moment hung heavy, each second stretching as they processed the implications of vulnerability. And then Leah spoke, her voice a quiet revelation. "You're right. There's something more. I've been thinking about how I want to move forward too." Ruth's heart fluttered at the prospect of mutual healing, but the echo of Leah's uncertainty loomed. This wasn't just a discussion, it was an opportunity to redefine their relationship. But with old wounds still fresh, could they truly leap into uncharted territory? The stakes felt impossibly high, and Ruth asked herself if she had the strength for this evolution. What if there were more revelations buried in that shared pain? What if, within their collective memories, new possibilities awaited to be unearthed? As the conversation deepened, Ruth could feel the contours of their past pulsing around them, a breath away from unraveling. The air thickened with expectation. Would they seize this moment to shape their future, or would they retreat into familiar patterns? This decision would not only redefine their connection, but ultimately reveal something profound in the process. The weight of the decision loomed large, and as they spoke, Ruth felt the question latch onto her. What would be required to truly shift their narrative from one of pain to a tale of empowerment and growth? In the warm light of the cafe, Ruth and Leah engaged in a delicate dance of vulnerability, each word shared revealing layers of pain and hope. As they unraveled the tightly wound threads of their past, Ruth realized that the conversation held the power to transform their relationship and her very self. "Mom, I never wanted you to feel like I was blaming you for everything," Leah finally confessed, her voice tremulous. "I just thought maybe if you had fought harder for your art, things would have been different for us." Her honesty struck a chord in Ruth, resonating with the echoes of her own guilt for having buried her creativity so deeply. "I understand now that my silence pushed you away," Ruth replied, steadying her voice. "I thought protecting you meant hiding parts of myself, but in doing so, I lost us both." The insight crystallized the urgency in her reflection. She had stifled her own expression and inadvertently barred Leah from hers. They both took a breath, the moment pregnant with new understanding. "Every time I tried to connect, I felt like I needed to put my own dreams on hold for you," Leah continued. "But I realize now how little that helped. We should have been encouraging each other to chase our passions." Ruth's heart swelled at the dawning realization that they were no longer isolated in their struggles. "Art has reminded me how significant vulnerability is," she said, gesturing to her paintings. "It's about revealing truth, not hiding it. Can we agree to share our journeys openly from now on?" Leah's eyes softened and a tentative smile emerged. "I'd like that. Maybe we could even collaborate on something that represents both our stories. It would be a tangible way to mark this moment." The idea sparked something sweet in Ruth's heart. "Let's do it. Our art can symbolize not just survival, but our rebirth together. It was a bold endeavor, and as excitement sparked between them, Ruth felt chains of shame and doubt beginning to crack around her. The conversation shifted from their shared pain to their dreams. Visions for the future were painted with brushes of creativity and dedication. Each suggestion from Leah was received with enthusiasm, and soon Ruth found herself swept up in the possibilities of co-creating a mural, a statement piece for both of them. As they planned aloud, Ruth realized exhilaration coursing through her. The significance of their connection, now strengthened through artistic collaboration, began to settle deeply. She had conquered the walls of fear she had constructed over the years, and for the first time, there was a palpable sense of approval for herself. Emboldened, she shared her aspirations about attending art classes regularly and perhaps pursuing a gallery showing. Leah's encouragement washed over Ruth like a warm tide. "I will support you, Mom. Let's push each other to be more of ourselves." Ruth felt the weight of that promise settle within her, not as a burden, but as buoyancy. Art had become their bridge, and this newfound connection could guide them through all future challenges. The past would not disappear, but now it would serve as the foundation from which they could rebuild. Over the next weeks, they set to work on their mural project, intertwining their distinct artistic styles into a singular expression. As they painted, their laughter intermingled with shared stories, each stroke of the brush mending the wounds once held apart by silence. With each vivid color layered onto the wall, they spun a narrative that encapsulated both struggle and triumph, illustrating the essence of their renewed bond. Ruth's commitment to her art flourished alongside her connection with Leah. She began to embrace not only her identity as a mother, but also the artist she had long suppressed. The mural soon came to symbolize an unfolding, depicting vibrant landscapes merging into soft sky hues, a testament to their shared journey through darkness into light. As they stepped back to admire the completed mural, Ruth felt more alive than ever. It reflected resilience and rebirth, not just for her, but for them both. Beneath the layers of paint, she recognized the transformative moments that had led her to this newfound sense of self. "Look what we've accomplished together," Leah said, brushing her hand against the mural's surface. "I'm proud of us." "I am too," Ruth replied, a sense of deep satisfaction washing over her. They were not merely mother and daughter. They had emerged as artistic partners, bound by shared experiences, paving the way for endless possibilities. As they stood in front of their creation, each color whispered remnants of old pain transformed into new hope. Ruth had not only reclaimed her artistry, but had also forged a stronger sisterhood with Leah, an authentic relationship tethered by mutual respect. In that moment of accomplishment, Ruth felt the pillars of her identity firmly established. She was an artist, a mother, a survivor. The fears that once plagued her had been repurposed into pillars of strength. She realized that facing the unresolved past had shaped a brighter future, filled with opportunities, inspiring her to step fully into her role as the woman she had sought to become. They both turned to leave, flicking off the lights in the studio. Ruth took one last glance at the mural, the vivid embodiment of their journey. As they exited, laughter bubbled between them, and Ruth stepped into the world with confidence gleaming in her heart. Now was the time to forge ahead, determined not to let doubt stagnate her growth. Each new brushstroke and moment of vulnerability would carry her deeper into the life she yearned for, a life rich in creativity, purpose, and connection. For herself, for Leah, and for the art that now brought them together, the journey had only just begun. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of having their voices heard.